Welcome to Beyond the Veil with Daniel Jackson, the podcast where we head down the road of the supernatural and beyond. So, sit back and hold on as we take a ride together to what lies in the unknown and beyond the veil. Beyond the Veil with Daniel Jackson presents guest host Dr. Simeon Hein. Dr. Simeon Hein examines critical new scientific findings in coherent energy matter and how these ideas help explain seemingly paranormal phenomena like space-time anomalies and orbs seen around creatures such as Bigfoot and other mysterious cryptids. He came across the idea of remote viewing in 1996 and took training while a skeptic. The results of the training were surprisingly positive and convinced him that there is a large area of scientific knowledge that is being withheld from public discussion. Subsequently, he established the nonprofit Institute for Resonance and began teaching remote viewing classes in Boulder, Colorado, and continues to teach online. He also became interested in the topics of crop circles, unexplained aerial phenomena, and extraterrestrials. And now your host, Daniel Jackson, with part 1 of Mirror Matter, Cryptids, and Other Realities.
Hello, and welcome to Beyond the Veil with Daniel Jackson. I'm your host, Daniel Jackson. Today we have Dr. Simeon Hein on the show. Dr. Simeon, how are you doing today? Or do you want me to call you doctor?
You can just call me Simeon. It's fine, Daniel.
Okay, yeah. How's things going for you today?
Going great. Yeah.
What kind of doctor are you? Man, I got this problem with my elbow. Can you fix that, or is it something different?
I'm a doctor of piled higher and deeper.
Oh,
or
okay.
As my former girlfriend used to say, post hole digger.
Oh.
I got really good at digging post holes.
Did you?
Yeah, for her. But it's actually sociology. My PhD is in sociology.
Oh, I'm kind of like a sociopath, but that's different.
Well, we study people like you. So
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
No, I'm sure somebody does, but that's okay. So, give my my audience a brief summary of what it is that you do. What's it come down to?
I was a statistics teacher for a long time in sociology. I did that for a little while. I heard someone talking about remote viewing one day on my local radio station. I was somewhat skeptical, but kind of curious at the same time because it had been part of a government program. I just figured the government, it's a little weird that government would be involved in psychic research. At the same time, they don't just fool around with things that don't exist. So there had to be something to it. So I got curious. What are they doing? Is there some machine you get hooked up to? You can see the future. Is it kind of invisibility cloaking pill? I don't know. I was just curious, and I took a class in it, and I saw that you got results that you shouldn't get. And since getting involved with that,
Right.
I got interested in crop circles, UFOs. These are all topics that are sort of part of these genres. You go to these conferences and you can't but help hear about other related topics.
There's a little bit of everything.
And now I'm an author, and my recent book is Dark Matter Monsters, about
Hey, cool. Look, it's Bigfoot.
about
I like Bigfoot.
cryptids and why do we get paranormal related phenomena. I'm just using that word because
Sure.
why do we get orbs and time slips and all sorts of strange experiences if Bigfoot's just an escaped gorilla or an undiscovered primate? Why would you get orbs and balls of light around them so frequently? And that's what I've been looking at recently.
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, if that doesn't sound like government shit right there, I don't know what does. I mean, they hide a lot of stuff from us because they don't want us to know what's really going on out in that world. You know, they want us to just think we should walk around and go to our jobs every day and take vacations and buy a bunch of crap we don't need, and that's it. But there's a lot more going on than just that.
It's partly that, Daniel, but I mean, it's our own cultural conditioning too. Even if you took the government out of it,
brainwashed.
We have this Judeo-Christian ethic in the U.S. and the Western world, which tells us a certain story about the universe.
Yes.
And
their version.
Yeah, the version is that we're the sort of the apex of intelligence on the planet. And I'm really calling that into question. I'm just wondering whether there are other life forms around that really don't want to interact with us a lot of the time. It doesn't mean they don't exist. It just means we're not their first choice for interaction. But it doesn't mean they're not there. And I think if you look at the evidence around cryptids and other types of life and intelligence that people interact with, you just have to ask the question, are we the apex of creation, or could there be other apexes out there that think they're the apex, like the Sasquatch, and that think we're the weird ones? And
hey, I mean, that guy can't be wrong, right? I mean, he is the OG of off-grid people. He knows how to keep away from us. I mean, so he sees us out here doing all the things that we do, and is looking at it and going, I don't want to be a part of that, so I'm not going to be seen. I mean, hey,
you have any ever encounters out there where you are?
No, but my wife and I always talk about looking out here in Arizona for chupacabras or something like that. But we do have encounters out here with what that you would call strange lights in the sky, and some of this remote viewing as well. I have that as part of my ability, but I'm not. I would say I'm not in control of it. I will just close my eyes and it just turns on, and I'm other places. But I have noticed sometimes, like I remember a couple of years ago, I closed my eyes and it came on, and what I see it being is my consciousness is somewhere else. And so I was actually outside of my own home, and I saw my car, my truck, my wife's car, the kids down the street playing, and I saw a car go vroom past my house. But from inside my house, I heard it go vroom because I was in another room. So I it happens to me all the time, so I know it's real. But for someone who it doesn't happen to is going to be skeptical of that, because it's like anything else in this world. If you have a pain in your arm or your knee, you feel as though you're the only one who's experiencing it, and everyone else thinks you're just faking until they actually go through it themselves.
Yeah, we are all a product of our conditioning, and we're not just suspicious of these phenomena that we call paranormal. We're suspicious of everything that's outside our culture.
Yes.
We have to take classes to learn foreign languages.
Yeah.
Foreign customs seem weird to us.
Yeah.
It's the function of just the way we are as humans is to really prefer things that are familiar, and to find things that are foreign as a little weird. And I see the paranormal world as an extension of that. It's not that these things don't exist or that it's not repeatable.
Right.
It is in its own way. It's just that, well, as your first statement kind of pointed out, it doesn't take a lot for us to be more suspicious. All you have to have is a little government disinformation.
Yes.
Pushing in that direction, be it Sasquatch or UFOs. I mean, I was in your state at one of the conferences, the International UFO Congress. It was at Fountain Hills, Arizona, outside of Scottsdale.
Oh, yeah, I've been up there.
On the reservation there. And I interviewed, I talked to Richard Doty, that had worked in the Air Force as an Air Force disinformation agent, and he doesn't work for them anymore.
Yeah, I have seen him on the TV show.
Yeah, and I did an interview with him.
Yeah, I wouldn't trust that guy as far as I could throw him.
Well, he's a different person now. I have to tell you that he's not employed anymore, and he was very candid about what they do, how they did it, and he was very open. It's amazing, but this isn't the first time I've heard it from someone that works with the government, that they had lots of money to give to journalists.
Yeah.
To create stories, spin stories. And he said it was large amounts in cash.
Sure.
That would be paid to the news sources that we believe we can trust, or we would like to believe we can trust, and yet they're just taking money from the highest bidder it seems like a type of prostitution, really. They're just taking money and writing whatever the donor is asking them to do. And that would mean our sense of reality has been distorted. And this has come up with these UFO hearings in Congress, UAP, UFO hearings. It's not just that we're not getting the information, that it's being withheld from us. It's that money has been spent and resources, as you know, and the listeners know, to create disinformation campaigns. So it's no wonder that we're all confused about all this, because our own tax money has been going to confuse us. I mean, it sort of doesn't make sense what we've been doing to ourselves as a society. It's like, you did not, you want to, okay, I get this, Daniel. There was a time, I remember this, where we used to in school go down and do duck and cover exercises, go down to the basement during these, atomic drills where they would
keep you in fear.
Right. Because I grew up in the New York City area. It was a reasonable target, probably number one target for Soviet missiles. And we did these exercises. And I get, I still remember as a kid going down into the basement to the bomb shelters, or what would have served as a bomb shelter, but we don't live in those times anymore. And I can understand back then, maybe the government saying, look, we can't handle any more fear. We can't handle any more,
garbage.
Yeah. There's so much going on right now in the Cold War. We don't want to scare people even more by talking about all these topics, but we're decades past that. Yes. What's the excuse now?
And I mean, nowadays, with all the technology that they have and everything, we all know that yesterday's bomb shelter is not going to protect you from today's bomb. So,
good point.
Yeah. Just saying. And I get it with the whole disinformation. Not that this is kind of off subject way of putting things, but it kind of reminds me of something. I was a fan of the 80s and rock music and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And the rock band Kiss, they wore the makeup. They would pay the photographers to not take pictures of them without their makeup on, so they could keep that mystique going. As well, this is what the government does. They will pay them to and we are going to believe these news sources because in the beginning, I mean, these are the only news sources we had beyond internet. So of course, these are the people who tell you how to live your life the way they want you to live it. And
it's a good analogy. Yeah. I was amazed looking at an interview with Simmons recently, the bass player from Kiss. He said that he still puts his own makeup on. I mean, they're still touring.
Yes. Yeah.
And he puts all that makeup. It takes hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were pretty big. I was never a Kiss fan in that era because I was going more for some other bands. But it is a good point, is that is entertainment. We know that they're not really, demon gods spitting blood. It's an act, right? It's theater, it's music, it's theater, it's drama. It's what we go out to see when we go to a concert. It's fun.
Yes. But we also get disinformation from TV and movies as well, too. They want us to believe that all this stuff is scary and we shouldn't be involved.
It's when we don't know that we're being disinformed.
Yeah, that's the thing.
When it's strange. And I'm afraid this is the situation we wound up in. We're still almost behind the Iron Curtain, it seems.
Yes, and when we don't know, that means that they can do more stuff and it'll keep it hidden from us.
Right. And this is why we're having hearings right now. We'll see if it gets anywhere. I think we'd all like it to get somewhere in Congress about UFO, UAPs, going back to your neighboring state, Roswell, and even earlier incidents. I mean, what was going on there? We know it wasn't it's not meteorites. It's not weather balloons.
No.
It's not flocks of geese. So why are there so many witnesses, hundreds of witnesses in the military, in the neighboring areas in New Mexico that say they saw something that was really anomalous and really strange, including the undertakers and the nurses? And why would all those people create those stories? Do they have nothing better to do than it takes energy to do interviews and to, like, we have to set this one up. We had a slight time misunderstanding or lack of knowledge, right? But it takes energy to do interviews and to do this. Why would hundreds of those people just do that? Don't they? When you have better things to do with your life than to make things up. And yet there's still no investigation of what have we been encountering all these decades, and it's probably going on right now. And even last week, the Navy said to one UFO researcher, it's classified. We're not giving you any more videos.
Yeah, why would they ask to have their lives inconvenienced when they know people are going to treat them differently once they do say something?
This is what Travis Walton said to us.
Yeah.
At the International UFO Congress, at that conference I just mentioned to you a few minutes ago up in Fountain Hills. They had a panel. The sheriff was on the panel from Snowflake, Travis's brother, and a neighbor, I think, and Travis. And what his brother said was very interesting. Such a good point. He goes, look, we grew up in a fundamentalist Christian community. This is the last story we would have invented. We got hostility for years after that. It's a small town. Yeah. There's no way in the world we would have invented a story like that unless you wanted to move the next day. I mean, what would be the point?
Yeah, why would you?
Exactly.
Even moving wouldn't make it any different, any better, you know, poor guy. Yeah, and I live, so I live down here in Sierra Vista, but do you know what's in Sierra Vista? The largest intelligence base in the United States for,
is that Fort
Huachuca?
Yeah, that's coming back to me because I know people that served there. I know people that served there. It was intelligence, counterintelligence, all that good stuff.
Yeah. Do you know what they used to do experiments with down there?
No, tell me.
Yeah, remote viewing.
Oh, yeah,
you know what else they used to do experiments on over there back in the 60s and 70s?
There was some RV work going on there. Well, the people that I know who served there, who've told me what it was like, I'm glad you brought this up. Fort Huachuca, I remember that from my University of Arizona days. People who are trained there told me the reason we don't have UFO openness about these topics is because what they learned at Fort Huachuca, which is that loose lips sink ships. He said it's very hard to get over. He literally told me this. This is a former, Pentagon official who served temporarily as Secretary of Defense. And he said, listen, it's very hard for me to get over my training from Fort Huachuca because we're told from the moment we get there that what wins wars and keeps the country strong is secrecy.
Is here.
Exactly. And if I'm, it's not in my DNA anymore to talk openly about any of these subjects because you get it drilled into you for a year when you're there for counterintelligence training or intelligence, or whatever you're there for training.
Yeah, I have some friends who do that here who I've met through riding motorcycles, and they don't say shit.
No, because it's so critical to any military is deception. Yeah, I mean, it's we've seen this in the situation in Ukraine over the past 2 weeks. Yeah. It's essential that you keep your adversaries from knowing your intentions and your next move. And this is what they're taught from the moment they go to Fort Huachuca. Yeah. And it's these same people that we're asking now to open up about UFOs, and we're asking them to do something that's the opposite of their training for decades, which is you don't say anything. If you say anything, people out in the field will die because of
it's like a trigger for them. They know exactly, as soon as they hear it, they know exactly, can't say nothing about that. Got to make up something else. Yeah, not only were they doing the remote viewing here, but back in the 60s and 70s, they were actually doing experiments on people like me, on psychic mediums there. Experiments on them.
Is that how you ended up there?
Yeah.
That is how you ended up there?
Well, this is how I ended up here. So I'm able to do something called channeling. And 4 years ago, I channeled with a bunch of different mediums, and every time something came through, it always said that I was going to move out west from Delaware. And in the very beginning, it was New Mexico, but then I was told a year ago it was going to be Arizona. So I asked my spirit guides where in Arizona, and they said, you'll know. And I said, okay. So the very next day I woke up, I told my wife, give me a map of Arizona. I'm going to see where we're going. And then I put the map in front of me. I closed my eyes, took my finger and started pointing at places. Now, when I get answers, I get touched on my face by them, and across my forehead, any spot is a yes. But when I get a no, it feels like a tear running down my face. So, and I feel this all day long. It never turns off. And in the very beginning, it was 2 touches. Now I'm up to 38. And I know all the names of the ones who are actually touching me. So, but when it's a no, it's just no. And so I kept putting my finger on places, and I got no, 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 no. Yes. We're moving to Sierra Vista. And what's in Sierra Vista? Yeah. Fort Huachuca. And I will tell you about my experience with Fort Huachuca after we get done this broadcast, because I won't mention it on the air. Yeah. Men in Black thing. But anyway, so let's talk about some
Sure.
questions here.
Go ahead.
Let's see. What do we got? Let's see. What happens? What often happens right before a Bigfoot encounter, and what is it usually that goes on before someone has an encounter with Bigfoot?
Right. It's a very interesting question. It's something that I came across many times in talking to people and reading about these encounters. And it's a sudden quiet. It just gets eerily quiet. Even the crickets stop chirping. This happens around UFO contactees too.
Yeah, same thing.
Different types of cryptid encounters, ghosts, and haunted sites. And it seems to be indicative that we're dealing with another state of matter. And our state of matter sort of gets sucked into it a little bit.
Right. There's a transition point, right?
There's a transition. Yeah, that's a good word to use. There's a transition going on to another state of mind, another state of matter. And if the crickets can feel it, it shows us it's not just pure fear.
Right.
I doubt crickets are afraid of Bigfoot any more than they're afraid. There's so many of them, and they're so good at hiding their location by chirping all at the same time. No, they can feel it though. I think they can feel another energy, and it just feels different to them. And it's kind of like when it gets really, light out and they don't feel like chirping anymore and they're quiet again when it gets really bright.
Right. It's that sense they just sense it, like when kids are at a rock concert and the lights go down, you say, oh no, the band's coming on. So everybody goes quiet.
Right. You have that feeling of anticipation before. Yeah, it was like Rocky Mountain Horror Show anticipation.
You're like, oh.
It's like that a little bit, and kind of like I mean, my first rock concert was Led Zeppelin. I saw them in Madison Square Garden in '77. That was my first. I started before the '80s, and that feeling. I think it's something like that. But it's interesting. Daniel, that this happens around Bigfoot sightings again.
Right.
Why theories people have heard, I've heard, you've heard for years from cryptozoologists. I'm not saying they're entirely wrong, but they just said it was a relic bipedal primate that's just rare. There's only a couple thousand of them, and they're in mountain ranges, and we don't have contact with them, and they're just like an undiscovered animal. It's happened before, like the mountain gorilla or the huge sea serpents and things like that turned out to be giant squid.
Even with regular animals as well, we see tigers all over the place, and all of a sudden, not too long ago, white tiger shows up. How the hell does that happen, right? But it's just something we didn't know about.
So that does happen. There are new species discovered, and I mean, it's reasonable with Bigfoot. The problem is it doesn't fit the evidence. The witnesses say it gets extraordinarily quiet, and that it's more than that. They will, and I haven't had this happen. And when I was at the University of Arizona, I would hike all over those mountain ranges. I came out to your area a couple of times, Cochise Canyon, the Mount Graham area. I went up there once to look at, the telescopes up there and stuff. And I imagine it's probably closed off now. But back then you could drive up there. And I've never experienced this, but what people say they experience is a growing sense of anxiety that turns to fear, that turns to a type of terror that
Sure.
progresses past terror to a feeling like extreme sense of panic. And I've spoken to people that this has happened to. Now, this is not coming from a relic primate, unless it has a special abilities, like I believe it does, that just is not your ordinary escaped gorilla. We're not talking about something you could see at the zoo. I've never experienced this at the zoo. This is a whole nother state of matter. I think that these creatures are tapping into another aspect of reality that they might be familiar with it at Fort Huachuca. We're talking about torsion fields and other types of energy that we know exists in the universe. Goes back to Paul Dirac, the quantum physicist that was interested in antimatter and, particles that we couldn't see, but he said mathematically have to exist. Mirror matter. That's what we seem to be dealing with. Mirror matter with another type of gravitational set of properties. That's what it seems to me is going on, because it's not just the sudden quiet. It's accompanied by your electronics frizzing out temporarily, your batteries draining, right? Or, as one researcher told me, your car starting by itself, just weird electrical phenomena. And this is what we see around so many of these different phenomena that you have to think it's probably the same phenomena. And if it's coming from an escaped gorilla, it's not an escaped gorilla.
Right.
It's another, type of life form that we're not familiar with it, but it's not just because it avoids us. It doesn't fit in our Western sense of science very easily.
Yeah,
just like quantum mechanics didn't for a long time either.
Yeah, people want proof of things, and they want proof. They don't want just proof of something that they can hold in their hands, but they want something that is constant proof as well. And these types of events aren't constant.
Right. They're
even
not
though
constant.
they happen sporadically, and you hear about the stories, but it's not a constant thing. And that's what intrigues us, but that's what also brings that sense of what the heck is going on here.
Daniel, it's constant in terms of the symptomology.
Yeah.
When people encounter it, they encounter the same thing over and over again. They don't encounter the same Bigfoot.
Right.
There are many species because it varies. And I had some discussion online on a YouTube channel about this. They don't just look like the Patterson Gimlin film, just a huge bipedal, hair-covered, ape-like humanoid creature with long arms that go down beyond the knees. Some of them people say look more like a caveman. Sometimes they look more like spider-like when they're on all fours crawling on the ground. They can crawl on their belly if they want to really avoid you or sneak up on you. And then there's a feline version of Sasquatch. There's a lot of different types. We don't even know how to start this conversation.
Yeah, and
that's where we're at in it.
As well as the different environments they are in as well. Like if they're in a cold-based environment.
Right. They're in your state too, and they're not just in mountains. They're out. People see them out. What was it? There was an incident in your state in Arizona where these prospectors saw them up in northern Arizona. There was only cactus up there as far as I could see.
Yeah.
Was it the Kreiber incident or something like that? I looked into that one. I've heard encounters from your state, and it can be in semi-forested areas, but we're not just talking about a creature that sticks necessarily around trees, mountains. They can come down and
they're going to go where they go to go.
They go where they go. And so it's just a very interesting subject. There's a lot of variation, but what you're saying is essentially true, which is that, and there's a name for this in statistics. I saw it come up with remote viewing recently. I forget the exact name. There's a type of a wobble in the data. You can't quite pin it down to a constant effect. It doesn't mean it's not happening. It's not saying very steady in your measurement system, but it doesn't mean in its own frame of reference it's not there. It just means you're not getting good measurements of it.
Right. Yeah. I had a guy show up in my Facebook. People show up in their Facebook. People you may know or something like that. And it was this guy. I can't remember his last name, but his first name was Paul. And he's a remote view guy, and he teaches remote viewing. And so I I just contacted him. I said, yeah, I got this going on and blah, 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 blah. And I'm a medium and all this stuff. And I said, yeah, I said, I live here in Sierra Vista. I said, you know what's in Sierra Vista? He said, yeah, Fort Huachuca. I said, yeah. He goes, yeah, I used to work there. I was in the service. I said, have a great day. Click. Because I did not want to talk to that guy anymore. Because once
that was, you were talking to Paul Smith.
That's him.
No, you could have talked to him. He gives public lectures. He's very open about his experience. And he mentioned Fort Huachuca as part of his training. So he would have known your area.
Yeah, he said he worked there for 12 years. Told me, he said
12 years, yeah.
Yeah, one of his kids was born there. But yeah, I mean, he gave me some information and stuff like that. But then when he said, yeah, I worked there and I worked there for 12 years. And
like
I know exactly what they do over there. I said, oh, great. This is coming to an end with this conversation. Have a great day. So, because of the experience that I had from there, only being here maybe a month and a half, 2 months, and that's when I had the experience with them. So, as soon as he told me he worked there, I was like, okay, I can't tell this guy anything more, because if I do, my experience will happen again. It's happened a couple of times after that, but I just don't pay attention to it anymore. But yeah, I mean, that's we see lights over the mountains all the time, and they fly around. I know it's not a weather balloon because we actually have a weather balloon that's right across as you go to the back end of our development, and then there's another development, and then that's the field. That's where the mountains are. I mean, the mountains are that close to us, and that's the Army base. They have it all. It's like miles and miles of. And there's an actual weather balloon that goes up in the air. Now we know it's not a weather balloon. We know it's got cameras on it, and they're checking the border and everything else that's going on. But so I know those lights that we see all the time are not weather balloons, because they move in directions and stuff like that. There's no way it's a tethered weather balloon is going to do that.
No, that reminds me of one of the stories that Richard Doty was involved with, the Paul Benowitz case. Because and that Doty described this. I mean, Benowitz was seeing, a type of surveillance system they had at Kirkland Air Force Base in Albuquerque, and Doty's job was to tell him that he was seeing UFOs, because they didn't really want him to figure out what these were, because they were part of the base security, since it's a nuclear storage depot, and so.
We see this balloon every day.
Sensitive areas, they deploy systems like this, and some people think they're UFOs. And Benowitz apparently.
Oh no, you could tell this one's not a UFO because it's actually in the shape of a blimp. So it's big and white, and I mean it's only a couple thousand feet up in the air, and we actually see it come down when they're bringing it back in, and we see it go up when they're putting it back out. But yeah, you can tell it's a blimp, but it's not. It's not the lights. We actually, the 4th of July, we went up to this one parking lot to watch the fireworks. Half the people there were watching the fireworks. The other half of the people, one of the guys we were talking to, were watching the lights over the mountains. They went there specifically to do that. And my wife was actually pointing out certain lights to the guy who was next to us watching the lights. He's like, oh, I didn't even see that one. Because we see drones all the time. These were not drones. They don't move like drones. We have experiences here.
Yes, it's very, very interesting.
Because it's cool down here. Because they have a well, part of it's cool. They have a low light law here, where they're not allowed to have lights very bright. All the street lights are and there's not a lot of street lights. They're kind of orange looking, so there's not a lot of light coming off of it, because they want to be able to see up into the sky. But
right.
The bad part about
Graham out there. Yep.
Yeah, the bad part is there's no light. It's hard to see when you're driving. So people don't go out at night as much. But yeah, we see stuff about the mountains all the time, and it's just
sure.
Yeah, crazy stuff. But yeah, it does get to that point. What you're talking about is when that happens, everything goes silent.
And that's another thing. These symptoms seem to be clustered together.
Yeah.
And this is why, to me, it seems we're dealing with a fundamentally different type of matter, something that I call coherent matter. It's the fifth state of matter. It's beyond plasma. It's an organized, self-organized toroidal type of shape, organized plasmas. We're familiar with those from lightning and neon bulbs, and
Right.
aurora borealis are glowing gases, ionized gases. Those can become organized into a coherent form where all the particles have the same frequency. And when they become coherent like that, it can really do strange things to the existing matter. The rest of us, the other 99%, it can do strange things to its environment, which is why I think a lot of these phenomena are connected. You get space-time slips that
Yes.
people experience.
Yeah.
People experience this around orbs and these type of light phenomena that are seen around Sasquatch and haunted sites and UFOs. You've experienced it.
Yeah. So when I found out that I was going, at the time when I found out I was becoming a medium, because I've seen spirit my entire life, I just didn't know why. I mean, it's kind of like, when I've seen so much, it just, you get used to it after a while. It's like, when we're kids and mom and dad feeds us green beans, and then 30 years later, you love green beans because you get used to it. So I got analogies. And so I was seeing these things all the time. So then when it was coming around the time for me to figure this out, my wife went away on vacation for 2 weeks out to California. And for those 2 weeks, I saw everything in my house imaginable you could think of that was in a scary movie. I saw the famed Hat Man a form come in my basement. I was down in the basement with my cat, and I said, "Come on, buddy, it's time to go upstairs." And he looked at me. He looked to his right. I looked to my left, and when I did, I saw a wall of blackness just appear in the middle of the room, and saw a man walk out of it. And he had the big wide rim hat and the black coat, and I couldn't see his face. I could just see his features. And then but he walked across the room. But when he did, the strange part, beyond that being strange, because I'm just used to it. I just watched it. I didn't do freak out. I just did one of these like, what's that? And but when he was walking across the floor, he didn't have any feet. So and he was perfect stride. He just went right through the wall. I know, being a spirit, being a medium, that ghosts don't walk through walls. They're just walking. That's also because this matter is no matter to them, because it's not. There's no physical matter to them. They see the outside, like they see our bodies. When they see your body, they see you. They don't see your full body and everything. They just see your frame of your body, and they see a light inside of you, not your soul. They know they're just like you, except you're attached to this meat suit. But yeah, I saw all these things in my house. So we had a paranormal group come to the house, and they were doing all kinds of experiments. And one of them, there was a girl taking pictures, and she was taking digital photos. And every time there was a picture of me with someone or by myself, I had like 15 or 20 light orbs completely surrounding me. And so, but a picture of anybody else, nothing. Like, they would set up these little boxes with wires on them and little lights on them. And I said, "What's that?" And they said, "Well, spirit produce static electricity." I said, "What do you mean?" He rubs my couch and he waves his hand over it, and they all light up. So they put them all around the house. And then they said, "Where do you have experiences?" And I said, "Well, everywhere in the house." I said, "Well, let's go in the bedroom." I walk in the bedroom, and every one of those boxes goes lights up. And I turn around and look at them, and they're looking at me, and I'm like, "What the hell?" And they're like, "I don't know." They walked past, nothing. And that happened the whole entire time. And then they had a thing called a spirit box, where they turned it on, and they had me pretend I was sleeping in my room at nighttime. They did it all at nighttime. The best part about having them over was they were witnessing everything that I had been witnessing, and that brought me some, validation that I wasn't going crazy. So they come in with the box, and they turn it on. And when they did, it starts spitting out words. It says Wendy, Helen, Paul, Michael, unique, special, energy, light. And then one time it said the word road. It said in that computer voice, it went road. And when it did that, the car went past my house, and everybody was like, "What the heck?" So then they asked the questions for 10 minutes, and for 10 minutes long, it answered. But the crazy part was, every time they asked a question, that they asked one question that said, "Are you here to harm Daniel?" And then the voice came out and said, "No, we are not here to harm Daniel. We love Daniel. We love Daniel's light. Daniel is the light." And I was like, "Daniel's the light? What the hell is that supposed to mean?" But so I found out later. But at the end of that, when I went out of the room, when they were out there, they were in a conversation. They turned around and I said, hey, you got all that information? He said, yeah, but there's a problem. And I was like, what do you mean there's a problem? He said, well, we can get that thing to spit out a word or two, but it never says sentences, Mr. Jackson. I said, oh, but it was cool, right? And he's like, yeah, we don't know. You know what they did? They got out of my front lawn. The whole team quit and didn't want to come back to my house because they told me, they said it takes usually 10 or 15 houses to get the information they got from one house, my house. They were
Wow.
freaked out. Yeah.
Mhm.
But I had all those experiences they witnessed all of it and they were like, holy shit. It turned out it wasn't the house. It's me. But yeah, I have those experiences all the time. I see spirit all day, all night.
This was Beyond the Veil with Daniel Jackson with Dr. Simeon Hein in Part 1 of Mirror Matter, Cryptids, and Other Realities. For more information about Dr. Hein, visit his website at www.mountbaldy.com. Other details about him and his institute and books are in the description. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Beyond the Veil with Daniel Jackson.